Greetings, this is Steve. My 18th birthday ought to have been a huge event then, but rather than rejoice, my family expelled me. Steve alone, no words, no warning. You are now 18, it's time to go it alone. That concluded things. I was taken aback. I have nowhere to go and am carrying my few belongings in a duffel bag. I took up couch surfing, attempting to avoid overstaying while remaining with friends. However, I eventually ran out of places to go and had to sleep in my car. I'm sleeping on the back seat. I called my brother Dan one night. I'm hoping my family can assist. I asked if I could spend some time with him while I got better. He simply chuckled and urged Steve to hurry up. Gather yourself. You now resemble a destitute vagrant. His spouse also mentioned. Yes, Steve, perhaps try not to be such a loser. Their remarks were hurtful. It dawned on me that they were mocking me and didn't care. I really was by myself. I moved around for the next few weeks, trying to make ends meet while homeless was a difficult situation, locating a secure place to sleep. I was exhausted from enduring hunger and living in constant uncertainty, yet there was a part of me that resisted giving up. I saved up enough cash for a gym membership so I could go to the gym on a daily basis and continued to apply for jobs until I was hired in retail. Though it wasn't much, it was a beginning. Regardless of where I had spent the previous night, I arrived on time and tried to save as much money as I could. Even though this was a really difficult time in my life, I persisted. It also demonstrated to me my limit of tolerance. Every day felt like a struggle, not only against the difficult circumstances, but also against the sorrow I felt from having been abandoned by the people I thought would be there for me. Despite everything, I continued to live because I felt the need to validate my worth to both them and to myself, that I was capable of surviving alone. Reaching that retail position seemed like a big achievement. It wasn't luxurious or well-paid, but it provided me with a paycheck and some stability. I tried to save every penny I could. I would occasionally go without food for a few months in order to pay the deposit on a condo I would be sharing with a roommate. I started to feel like my version of normalcy was returning. I finally had a real roof over my head and a kitchen where I could cook after we divided the bills. It was as though I had stepped into a tiny bit of paradise right at the beginning of things becoming right. Everything shifted. When the pandemic struck, companies began to close. My roommate also lost his job when my retail store closed. Our inability to pay the rent quickly put me back where I started. Without a job or a house, I'm back living in my truck. I set up a little camper on the back this time. At least it was mine, even though it was small and chilly. I contacted them once more in the hopes that perhaps family meant something, merely requesting a safe place to park my camper. I was feeling both desperate and hopeful when I called my mother. Can I leave my camper parked at the house for a bit? Mom? Just until I make sense of it all? After a lengthy silence, she answered in a chilly, detached tone. Steve, we need to be realistic. You must pay rent in order to park here. Not just any rent either. The going rate. The going rate for using their driveway for parking. Though it was absurd, there was no going back. No affection, no family backing. Just business. It was unbelievable to me. I really am having trouble with this. That's your response then? Steve, that's how things have to be. Each of us carries a burden. I hung up the phone. The pain of rejection intensified because I had nowhere else to turn, and it was disguised as necessity. I stayed in my truck, hiding out in the back corners of grocery store parking lots, using the public lavatories. Days melted into nights, and every dawn served as a constant reminder that I was homeless, but still clinging to hope. Finding food and staying warm wasn't the only things needed to survive at that point. It was about maintaining my self-respect and perseverance. I was turned away once more when I tried to break or return to my family to beg for assistance. I thus concentrated on what I could manage. I kept cleaning and organizing my camper, applying for jobs, and telling myself that this wasn't the end of my story. It was a difficult chapter. Every day in my camper was a struggle for survival, but I persisted, sending my resume to every job posting I could locate. I eventually got lucky and got a job in a nearby warehouse. It was a chance, but it wasn't going to be easy or close. All I needed was that. I went to the new job with my truck. My pulse is racing with a mixture of anxiety and excitement. It was a difficult task. Long days spent standing up, packing and managing shipments. However, I owned it. I summoned the confidence to ask Mr. Thompson, my harsh but fair boss, if I could leave my camper in the business lot until I could get back on my feet. With a contemplative gaze, he asked, "Are you going to stay here, Steve?" "Indeed. My purpose for being here is to work," I answered, my resolve evident. Mr. Thompson agreed and gave a slow nod. "Fine. You can connect the camper to our power source. Just watch out that you don't get in anyone's way." That little assistance. Water and power availability were crucial. It allowed me to have lights at night and a warm place to sleep, which gave me a small sense of dignity. I put all of my effort into the work, showing up early, staying late, and consistently offering to work extra shifts. My efforts were not in vain. After 6 months, I was summoned to Mr. Thompson's office. "I've observed your work ethic, Steve. It's very remarkable. What would your thoughts be if you were promoted to supervisor?" The promotion served as a lifesaver. It also came with a big pay boost. All of a sudden, living was more than just getting by. It had to do with creating something. I kept every spare penny, reduced my belongings to just the necessities, and began searching for a more permanent location than the back of my camper. I saved up enough money a year later for a manufactured home down payment. It was real, even though it wasn't a mansion. It belonged to me, too. A 3-bedroom home in a peaceful neighborhood where nobody was aware of my previous difficulties. The burden of the past few years seemed to disappear as soon as I got the keys. As I stood in my new home's empty living room, I understood that this place went beyond just a house. It served as a metaphor for everything I had conquered. I was proud and a little overwhelmed that I had raised my life back from the ashes of rejection and adversity. From living in my truck to this, I posted a picture of myself receiving the keys to my new house on social media to announce the news. Never give up. I composed. I had no idea that post would trigger memories from my past, jeopardizing the tranquility I had worked so hard to establish. When the past called, the excitement surrounding the post was still strong, in the true sense. As I was organizing kitchen supplies, there was a loud knock on my front door, perhaps anticipating a cordial neighbor. When I opened it, Dan and his family were standing there, their eyes scanning my house with an excessive smile. "I noticed your post, Steve. This appears to be a nice place," Dan said as he entered without being asked. His spouse and children trailed their gaze, famished as they peered about. "Dan, why are you in this place?" I tightened my grip on the box and asked. "All right?" Dan's tone was far too casual at first. "We were thinking, why don't we move in since you have all this space and nobody else lives here? We will go unnoticed by you." I looked at him, feeling angry and in disbelief. "How come? No, this is my house, Dan." At that moment, Dan waved a stack of papers in front of me. "We even composed a few rental contracts. You're free to remain in your RV. You mean that's what you're used to?" I accepted the documents. I scanned the ridiculous terms and signatures that are obviously not mine, my heart racing. They're not real. "Dan, this is not what I signed. It's not like you can just move in here." I wasn't backing down when he saw. Dan's conciliatory exterior buckled. His tone became abrasive. "Steve, please don't make this harder. We are related." That's when I decided what to do. "Leave my home now. Dan, right now." Until I took out my phone and began calling the police, they remained unmoving. I felt like an outsider in my own house, and it was strange to watch them sit in my living room like they belonged. It didn't take the officers long to evaluate the situation when they arrived. It was evident who was at fault due to the falsified rental agreements and the tampered locks. Dan's family was being escorted out by an officer who said, "Sir, you'll need to leave the premises now." Dan objected, but there was really nothing to debate. The reality was too clear to miss. A heavy silence descended upon the house as the door shut behind them. I was truly alone for the first time, but in a place that was unquestionably mine. I made plans for extra security and arranged for the locks to be changed, but it was obvious that I was not the helpless child they had known. I couldn't let anyone take away my accomplishment and fortress, which was this home. The silence in my house felt more like a victory than it had before the confrontation. It went beyond simply providing a roof over my head. It was about taking back my territory and standing up for the life I had created for myself. In the calm that followed, I took out my phone and did the action that had sparked the entire ordeal. I went on social media, but this time I posted the entire narrative about the attempt on my house by Dan and his family, the fictitious rental agreements, and their unexpected arrival. I wrote about reporting things to the authorities and refusing to submit to years of coercion. The outpouring of support was tremendous. Friends, acquaintances, and even extended family members, all horrified by Dan's actions, poured out supportive messages. Numerous individuals recounted their personal tales of surmounting poisonous partnerships, resulting in a fabric of fortitude that surpassed my personal encounters. My immediate family experienced a swift and severe backlash. Family members who had previously kept quiet about my hardships now publicly denounced their behavior. Dan and my parents were gradually relegated to the periphery of family get-togethers and group conversations, which was an obvious irony. They had been cruelly ignored for years, and now their social exclusion was both appropriate and long overdue. I experienced a sense of community unlike anything I had ever experienced, thanks to the outpouring of support and personal stories from people. It made me more determined to sever all contact with Dan and my immediate family. I deleted them from social media, blocked their numbers, and broke the last ties that had ever done me any good. I was struck with a deep sense of peace as I stood in my living room with the long shadows cast across the floor by the late afternoon sun. From the rejection I experienced on my 18th birthday to this very moment, my journey has been full of obstacles, but every one of them has taught me something new about my own resilience. I had come to believe that I was capable of surviving, thriving, and creating the life I wanted, free from other people's expectations and manipulation. I could see so much promise in the future when I looked ahead. The pressure of what my family expected of me had left me, with dreams to pursue, destinations to discover, and a renewed sense of self-independence of those who had never valued it. I was free to pursue happiness on my own terms. I was in the perfect place as the sun set, filling my house with a warm, golden glow. I was in charge of my life for the first time, prepared for whatever difficulties might arise from every roadblock I had encountered. No one could ever take away the independence and self-respect I had established. Surrounded by the tranquility I had worked so hard to attain and the community I had built, I felt completely at home. As Steve's journey draws to an end, I want to ask you something to consider. Do you always have to keep your family close, even if they negatively impact your life? Or is it sometimes better to just cut them off? When it comes to family and personal well-being, this is a complicated and nuanced topic. Please share your ideas, insights, or guidance in the comments section below. Not only did your insights contribute to the development of this community, but they can also help others who may be facing similar challenges.